Hi guys, it's Craig here and welcome back to my vinyl channel. Of all the things that I've wanted to talk about on this channel, I think one of the main important things I should start with is buying a turntable. Now, I'm not an expert, but I've been around for a little while and I've had some experience with turntables, okay, back in the 70s and now today again. And there are a few talking points that I wanted to bring to your attention that I think are important. Now, there's a lot of videos on YouTube about buying turntables, and there's a lot of great ideas out there. And certainly, I think I've got some important issues here that you need to consider before you make your purchase. Now, let's suppose you already have a turntable and you want to buy a second one, or you want to upgrade. These are things you should really consider. So, in a nutshell, we're going to talk price. That's important. You got to think about what that's going to do to you. How much do you want to spend? The purpose of the turntable, which is the environment, what are you going to use it for? Obviously, you're going to play records with it, but what kind of an environment are you going to be listening to records in? We'll talk about more of that in a minute. Direct drive versus belt drive. Big controversial topic. Let's talk about that a little bit. S-shaped tone arm versus straight tone arm. What's the difference? We'll discuss that. And finally, what kind of equipment do you have at home that you are going to be wanting to plug your turntable into? All right? You'll need to know that before you buy a turntable. Okay, so let's start with the price. A lot of times the more you spend, the better off you are. And I think in a lot of cases, when it comes to audio and turntables and things like that, that there is a point reached where the quality just doesn't really get all that much better. So although, like me, you'd probably love to have one of those $35,000 contraptions, this video is not about how to take a mortgage out on your house, okay? So, I mean, if you've got money to burn, go ahead. You don't need to be watching this video if you're going to spend that much on a turntable. You'll get everything you desire and more. Okay? But as far as just the average person, I would say keeping it simple, let's say spending anywhere between $150 and $600 would be a good range. Now, somewhere within that range is going to be comfortable for you. And keep in mind, you're not just buying a turntable, you're also buying a phono cartridge as well. This is the needle, the stylus, and the stylus assembly that goes on here and plays the records. There's no sense spending $600 on a turntable and then going to a bubblegum machine and getting a phono cartridge, okay? That's just silly. So leave room in your budget for a good quality phono cartridge. This particular one is an Audio-Technica AT440 MLA is the model. I went through 3 or 4 cartridges and nearly abandoned the whole vinyl hobby altogether before I found this one. And it kind of saved me. It saved my hobby. Ortophon as well has some great sounding cartridges, and other companies too, okay? So, like I said, leave room in your budget for a decent phono cartridge, all right? Spending maybe $300 to $400 on a turntable or less, if that's all you've got, and shelling out a good $120, $150 to $200 on a phono cartridge would be a great idea. You'll just be a lot happier with the sound. So there's lots of options out there, and the main thing is to listen to what you're buying first. Don't just walk into a store and pick up a box and walk out. Try to listen. Try to go on YouTube and listen to people's turntables, listen to different phono cartridges, and see which ones seem to appeal to you. I know it's YouTube and it's been compressed and everything, but it certainly gives you a good idea as to what you're going to be buying. Okay? So, listen, I'm saving up for another turntable. I'm probably going to buy a project, however you pronounce that. And it's a very simple turntable. It's going to set me back about $500, but I already have a phono cartridge that I'm going to use. So I'm good with that. Audio-Technica has a entry-level turntable out there. It's an ATLP 60. Decent turntable. Not very upgradable. You can't change the cartridges. You can't change the stylus pressure or anything like that. So you're kind of stuck with what it comes with. But certainly as an entry-level turntable for somebody who's not sure whether this is going to be a serious hobby for them, the thing sounds good. I've heard it, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. So not a bad place to start. So it just depends on how serious you are about it and how much money you have to spend up front. And just keep in mind that as soon as you buy something that's not going to be useful in a couple of years, it depreciates and you've wasted your money. So, you know, try to go in with both feet and get something that you think is going to last you, but at the same time, is not going to be overkill for your needs. All right. Hope that helps. So this turntable here is an Audio-Technica AT-LP120 USB, and I paid $175 for it, brand new. It's worth more than that now. I think they're selling for like more close to $300 to $500, depending on where you go. So it has a lot of features and bells and whistles on it that you might not need. So if you don't, then stick to a basic turntable. Spending $500 on like a project basic, on-off switch speed selector, and that's all it's got, might get you a better quality turntable in the end because of there being less bells and whistles and less things that can go wrong with it as well. The environment that you have to listen to your turntable or use the turntable matters. For one thing, if you're going to be in a DJ situation where you're going to be streaming live music and you're going to be spinning records and switching records around and possibly doing some back cueing, things like that, then you're going to want a turntable that's direct drive, for one thing, and with features on it that allow you to do those things. Removable cartridges. Okay, this tone arm allows me to switch these out, just hot swap these cartridges out. So when I'm DJing, I might use this less expensive cartridge because I'm kind of putting it through a little bit of more rough handling than I normally would. And then when I'm listening to music seriously by myself in a leisure environment, then I would put on my expensive cartridge and just play the records. And being able to hot swap cartridges like that allows you to do that. So if your turntable has that ability, or if that's something that you want to be able to do, then I would highly consider having a turntable that can do that. I'll just put this back on here. Takes a few seconds to switch this around. And if you want to have a few different phono cartridges available to you that you can just hot swap and use for different things, then you're going to want a turntable that will allow you to do that. Some of the newer turntables that have come out these days, you can swap cartridges, but you have to physically screw them on to the tone arm, and that's going to take you a while to swap out a cartridge. Because once one of these things is lined up and ready to go, then it's just a matter of swapping it like you just saw me do. But if your tone arm has the kind, if your turntable is the kind of tone arm where the cartridge screws right on to the tone arm and it can't just unplug, then you're kind of stuck with that cartridge unless you want to go through the painstaking procedure of realigning another cartridge, which can take over an hour. You're kind of stuck with it, leaving sort of the same phono cartridge on it all the time, and switching it is going to be a bit of an ordeal. Not something you want to do very often. So that's what I meant by what's the turntable going to be used for? What kind of listening are you going to be doing? And is it important for you to swap the cartridges or upgrade the cartridge if you so desire? Like I said, some of the turntables that are out there, the cartridges just plug into the tone arm. All the settings are already done for you, and it's easy, but if you want to put on a different cartridge, you can't, because the tone arm is not made for that difference, and you can't adjust it at the back like you can with this one, so you won't be able to go for a different model of cartridge. And if that's not important to you, then you don't have to worry about that. So those are things to consider. Now, we get into some nitty-gritty technical details here. Belt drive versus direct drive. And for those people who aren't sure what the difference is, a direct drive turntable, the motor is basically right in the center. It's part of the platter assembly. So the motor goes around and it just turns the platter, right? directly. So whereas a belt drive, actually I'll just remove this platter here for a moment. A belt drive turntable, the motor would be somewhere off to the side, you know, and it would have a belt coming off of its pulley or of its shaft that goes around this inner ring here on the turntable. So it's belt driven. All right. Now, what's the difference between the two? There's some really great belt drive turntables out there and some crappy ones. And by the same token, there's some great direct drive turntables out there and some crappy ones. What you're dealing with here is how the motor is going to rotate the platter. So a motor that's directly connected to the platter like this, like a direct drive turntable is, that motor better be quiet. It better be quiet, dead quiet. Otherwise, any vibrations will be picked up by the stylus and you're going to hear them, and that sucks. Okay, so if you're going to buy a direct drive turntable, hopefully they've designed it, you know, in that way so that it's quiet. Some of them are, some of them aren't. So make sure you listen and, you know, check to make sure that there's not some unwanted rumble or hum or something like that accompanying the music. All right, very important. Direct drive turntables tend to be a little more complicated internally because in order to spin that motor at 33 RPM or 45 RPM or whatever, there has to be quite a bit of control. The motor has to be a multi-pole motor and it has to be digitally controlled and monitored to keep it at that speed. It's not a very easy thing to do to keep a motor spinning at a very slow speed like that and have it be stable. So there's a lot of electronics involved and technology involved in doing that. So this could potentially be more expensive to buy, to design. All right. Now, on the other hand, a belt drive turntable, the motor spins at a normal speed like a motor does, right? And then by putting the belt around that large inner ring on the inside of the platter, the speed is geared down to the normal speeds that you listen to vinyl at, 33 1/3 or 45 RPM. Okay, this is a little more stable. I mean, as far as, well, it's simpler. Okay, that motor, as long as it's, you know, controlled, the speed is controlled internally to stay at a proper speed. That's really all that needs to happen. And it's easier to do that when the motor is rotating quicker. It has its own sort of momentum to rely on. Belt drive turntables tend to be a lot simpler than direct drive turntables. And for that reason, there's a good chance that they might even be less expensive in some cases. But the bottom line is, it doesn't really matter which one you choose. It's just that if you're planning on doing any DJing, heavy DJing, queuing up records and backspinning and things like that, or back queuing, you're going to want to use a direct drive turntable. Belt drive ones aren't made for that. You know, they're just not. Okay, you're going to stretch the belts. It's just not made to be jostled around like that. They're made for just playing the record, and that's it. You know, the motors in a good belt drive turntable are generally isolated, mechanically isolated somewhat from the platter. So the chances of getting any motor noise or hum or rumbling sounds are minimized. Okay, so, and on the other hand, a good direct drive turntable will have a quiet motor and quiet bearings and will not transmit any sound to the stylus. So either one will do. I don't think it matters much for casual listening which one you choose. As long as they're quiet and the motors are quiet and there's no noise, either one is fine. If you're just looking at listening to vinyl in your home and that's it, simpler the better, I think. The next one, tone arm, which is this thing here. The big debate about tone arms, S-shaped versus straight. All right, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this. The main thing is that I don't think there's any difference in the sound. A lot of guys in the stores that are selling you turntables, they'll try to come up with reasons why you should buy a straight tone arm or reasons why you should buy an S-shaped tone arm. You know, there are some technical differences. Some of the newer turntables coming out these days have the straight tone arms. They're made of, materials that are light, that don't resonate, so that you won't get any distortions or ringing through the cartridge. And, they're made of stable materials and good stuff, good quality. But an S-shaped tone arm like this has the advantage of it not being symmetrical. It's not a straight rod. It's a bent piece of metal. So it's not going to have a lot of resonant frequencies either. In my opinion, there's really not a lot of difference. You still might want S-shaped tone arm just because it looks cool. It's a nice system, works well, and it's really, I think it comes down to, in the end, personal preference. All right? I really don't think that sound quality is much of an issue. So choose the one that serves your needs. Finally, what are you hooking it up to? Do you have an amplifier at home? Do you have a stereo? Do you have something like this back here where you've got a preamplifier and an amplifier and all that stuff where you can just plug in any old turntable and, Bob's your uncle? Well, then that's all you need. Just a turntable. You don't need one with a built-in preamplifier or a USB port. You're only going to pay extra for those. And if you don't need them, don't pay for them. If you've got an old stereo receiver around or a turntable preamp already, then just buy a basic turntable. Don't pay for extras that you don't need. But if you don't have something like that, or a stereo or a preamplifier already, then you might want to buy a turntable that's got a preamplifier built in, such as this one. Although I took the preamplifier out for reasons I won't get into right now. I'll put a link down below for that. If you don't have a facility to plug it into, such as a stereo or a preamplifier, then you're going to have to get one that's got one built in. And thirdly, USB. Do you want to hook your turntable up to your computer? Is a computer all you've got? Do you want to archive your vinyl onto your hard drive? Then I would highly recommend getting a turntable with a USB port on the back. It's so much less hassle when it comes to hooking up your turntable to your computer. So the equipment that you've got and that you want to hook it up to is going to dictate what turntable you buy. With a preamp, without a preamp, USB or not, it depends on what you're plugging it into. So that is a big factor. Some people are going to come home with a turntable, it doesn't have a built-in preamp, and they're going to try plugging it into their sound card on their computer, and it ain't going to work. It's not going to work. Same with a mixer. You can't just jack it into a mixer like that and expect it to work. You need a phono preamp, specially designed for phono, for turntables. All right? So keep that in mind. There's a lot of decisions to make, and I hope these 5 points have helped you make that decision. Personally, the best thing for you to do really is just do as much research as you can. Read reviews. Listen to as many turntables as you can. YouTube is a great place to sample what a turntable sounds like. You're going to hear a hum. You're going to hear a buzz. You're going to hear a rumble if it's a cheap turntable on YouTube. So you'll know to stay away from that. And the same goes with the phono cartridges. If you like the sound of the phono cartridge on YouTube, then you're absolutely going to love the sound of it on your new turntable. I have a video coming up how to set up a turntable. So after you make your choice, please check that video out. It'll be posted very soon, and I'll put a link down below when it is posted so you can set up your new turntable properly so that you can get the best sound out of it. That's the next step after you buy the thing, is getting it set up properly. It's very important. So I hope this video helped, guys, and thanks for watching. Keep spinning those records because vinyl is final. Cheers.